Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome back to Vandy247 live on a Wednesday morning in Nashville. It's a lot better weather-wise today, at least so far, than it was yesterday. So hopefully it stays that way for today and the rest of the week. That's what it looks like in the radar, so fingers crossed. But we're talking some SEC, some Vandy baseball today. The Commodores still don't play in the SEC tournament until tomorrow. That game will likely be pushed back time-wise. It could be a later night than we thought it might have been ahead of this tournament, but we'll see what happens. And we're talking Vandy baseball. We're previewing them in the SEC tournament. We're talking about their postseason seeding potential and potential in the postseason, getting to a super, getting to Omaha potentially. I'm joined by Chris Lee today live from Hoover this morning. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, good morning.
How's the weather in Hoover? Is it? Did you survive the tornado watch last night?
Oh, there was a tornado watch down here. There was one your way.
Yes.
No, I came to the hotel, recorded some stuff, and yeah. Rewind again this morning, do it all over again, and as soon as we're done, I'll be headed to the tournament to watch some other teams for a bit.
Nice. So you won't be there tomorrow for Vandy though, right?
No, I've got to head home tonight. My wife has a minor-ish surgery, so got to be home. If Vanderbilt makes it to the weekend, I might make it back depending on family circumstances, but we'll be watching from TV either way.
Absolutely. I think pretty sure Joey will be there tomorrow for the game. We'll be covering from TV, of course, as well. I do want to tell you about Sanders Moving, baseball sponsor for the season. They are leaders among moving companies in Nashville and the surrounding area. Their team of professional movers are focused on delivering efficient, hassle-free moving at an affordable price. Whether you're moving across town or across the country, Sanders Moving has you covered. Visit them at tedrsandersmoving.com. Well, Chris, I think it's been about a week since we last talked about this Vanderbilt baseball team. As we lose Chris's camera for a moment, we'll get that back. Obviously, Vanderbilt sweeps Kentucky. You had a wild Friday night game that we saw. Obviously, it was wild Thursday night as well, back-to-back walk-offs, and then Vanderbilt takes the series sweep over Kentucky on Saturday to set themselves up. I tweeted, Chris, a top 5 overall national seed. I thought that cemented them. We know they were at that point after the sweep. We knew after winning the series, we knew they were going to be a top 8. But you sweep Kentucky. Is that fair to say they sort of cemented themselves as an upper echelon top 8 national seed, barring getting blown out in their first game in Hoover? I would guess.
Yeah, I don't. The world in which they get dropped out of the top 8 and, maybe the top 5, I guess I could see it if you just don't think they're as good as some teams with the metrics are below them potentially. But I use this, I do kind of an average of KPI and RPI, which are the two computer metrics that the committee uses. And I've updated it for the top teams this morning. And Vanderbilt is 3 in the RPI and 1 in the KPI for an average of 2. That's the top mark in the country. No, I don't think they're getting a 1 seed. Maybe if they won the SEC tournament, they'd be on the board. I still think it would go to Texas. But that is a bit of a statement about how how good of a season they've had, which I've been saying for a while. I don't think people really believed it. But I've been, if anybody would listen, I've been telling you for a while, the metrics that they are racking up are amazing. And now, as the quality of play has started to follow, and they've had some high-profile series wins lately, people are looking at it and going, "Oh, their body of work's pretty good."
Yeah, to me, Chris, it feels like the last 2 to 3 years in this program have almost clouded what they've done this season to where people, and mostly Vanderbilt people in this circle, but SEC fans in general have seen the last 2 to 3 years of Vanderbilt baseball not quite be what they're used to. Now, they've still been good, right? They were an 8 seed in Hoover, I want to say, last year. They were in a regional. They were a 2 seed. They got in, but obviously didn't win. They haven't been to Omaha since 2021. So whether you call that a slide, whether you call that a downward trend, what have you, it hadn't been what it was. Now,
yeah,
different. Not being what you had been is different for Vanderbilt than it is for South Carolina. Look at South Carolina right now. I mean, look how far they have fallen. Look at Mississippi State over the years, how they've fallen and how they've been in flux. Vanderbilt has always, their floor has been to a high enough level to where it really hasn't fallen off a ton. But you get a season like this, and I'm probably talking mostly Vandy people, Chris. I think the narrative has just clouded this program so much that there's still fans that are almost like, okay, I'm waiting till the postseason. Like I know they went on the road to sweep, to not sweep Tennessee, but beat Tennessee. We saw the sweep against Kentucky. They're playing so well right now, and they're so hot, and they're hitting the baseball so well that I feel like there's still Vandy fans that look at it and go, okay, let's get to the postseason though. And that's fair. But Chris, the way they're hitting the baseball, they haven't been hitting the baseball like this over the last 2 to 3 years. Now pitching wise, they've been pitching and defense that hasn't changed. We've talked about that. But Chris, to me, it's almost reverted itself in a way to where you're getting plenty of hitting, right? You're getting plenty of clutch hitting too. But the pitching, like Bowker's been fine, and JD Thompson's been really good most of the time. And Fennell, even though he struggled the last couple outings, had a really good relief outing there against Kentucky. But you haven't needed the pitching to be the pitching hasn't felt the pressure. You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And so it's almost reverted. There's a couple thoughts there, but what this team has done is still extremely impressive with the talent they have on the roster. I mean, you saw all the SEC teams. The only guy they had close was Sawyer Hawks on the second team, Brody Johnston, all freshman. No Jonathan Vastine on the all defensive team. And they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. You saw in the press conference, we weren't there. Tim Corbin said the best defensive player is the shortstop at Vanderbilt. And so, Chris, to me, they're playing with a huge chip on their shoulder that we just haven't seen from this program in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, look, man, I could give you a 30-minute answer for all that, but I'll just give you some various thoughts. I think the narrative around their program has been shaped by two things: the lack of power, which has been written about endlessly, talked about endlessly on social media, and it has dominated the conversation. And there are other things that they do well. They're not power, but I've been on the show how many times saying, hey, look, they're doing some other things well. Just nobody's paying attention to them because that's not the talking point. The other one, and part of the narrative started to turn a little bit when they swept Georgia at home, which was a series that I thought they were going to have a really hard time with. And then
that's when I thought they could be an Omaha team, the Georgia series.
Well, and then the other one was Knoxville, because that's the other thing that has shaped the narrative around the program is they're getting passed by, they're getting lapped. And the other one is they won't use the portal, right? And Tim's stubborn and won't adapt and blah, blah, blah. And I've been saying, hey, look, it's not what people are saying it is, right? And people weren't hearing it because I think you still have the specter of, the national title in Knoxville and Tennessee owning the series. And those are fair talking points, right? But I think sometimes things get really distorted to where, yes, or those issues, of course, those were issues, but they're not the whole picture. And let's hit a couple of these things. I said I don't think Tim Corbin's philosophy was to ignore power. I just don't think it has come yet. And now Brody Johnson's got a dozen home runs. Riley Nelson's got 7, a couple of them the last couple of weeks. Cullen Barcy's been a big power threat lately. Jonathan Vastine. Some of that could be just weather and playing in a bigger ballpark. It could be a lot of things. I said with Mancini from the beginning, he had a hand injury. Those things can hurt your power. 2 of his last 3 home runs have come the last 2 series. Yep. He had 15 last year. Braden Holcomb has really come on. We knew he could. So if you look at it that way, I think it's validation of a lot of what I've been saying is I don't think that they just ignore power. It just hasn't come yet. Well, now it's starting to come. And look, baseball is it's a tough game. And Texas A&M was preseason number 1. Got all kinds of pro talent. If they lose today, and really unless A&M wins the tournament, they're not going. I mean, Tennessee, everybody back in when Tennessee was 20-0 said, hey, Tennessee's got it rolling again. They're going to lap the field. Well, they started playing teams, which, by the way, that's another thing that I said, hey, look, Vanderbilt's playing some real teams out of the league. And what makes good and great baseball teams look ordinary? Playing other good and great teams. And when you're beating teams and you're winning every series game on a run rule in the 7th inning against a team that doesn't have anything like what you're going to see in the league, that distorted the narrative with everything too. Now what you're seeing is a team that's coming together. Oh, by the way, the transfer thing. Yeah. He doesn't use the portal aggressively enough. Well, I have some questions. Are you seeing some rosters with some chemistry issues other places because they brought the wrong people in? You look at the transfers he's brought in. Riley Nelson, I think Riley Nelson is having maybe the most underrated season that I've ever seen in Vanderbilt baseball. And he's not a power hitting stud, but he gets on base at an incredible clip. He's 3rd or 4th in the SEC in batting average and league play. He's a fantastic defensive first baseman.
Plays
maybe
a great
the best
first
I've ever seen here. And then they like it defensively. The left side of the infield is tremendous. Yeah. RJ Austin, Gold Glover in center. Again, there's stuff there if you're looking for it, but people haven't been looking for it. But transfers, man, let's talk about that for a minute. Riley Nelson's a transfer, having a huge impact. NIL
Mac Rose. But...
Mac Rose. Vastine's not a transfer, but I think that's a place where they used NIL and people said, Vastine's not back, not a big deal. Well, let's have that conversation now. They got flexible there. Jacob Humphrey, transfer from 2 years ago. Been fantastic when he's been healthy. Or maybe not fantastic, but really good. Mac Rose, Mancini. You got Jaden Davis and Mendez off the bench as your reserves. You go to your pitching staff. Cody Bowker, transfer. Connor Fennell, transfer. Sawyer Hawks, transfer from 2 years ago. Tommy O'Rourke, transfer. Levi Huseman, transfer. They have used the portal a lot more effectively than people have given them credit for. I think with Hawks and Humphrey, they were hurt last year, and people just kind of forgot about them. But that was a key part of the story. And I just think, look, my job is not to defend Tim Corbin or be his agent, but I've just kind of felt like a lot of the criticism of Tim was very loud and very unfair. And here we are, and look where he's got the team.
Yeah, I'm with you on the transfer thing, absolutely. And look, Joseph Jerwa, the kid from Michigan State, who is lighting it up up there in East Lansing for a team that is a 12 seed in their conference tournament. So make that make sense.
Billy, if he doesn't back out at the last minute, they may be league champs and the number 1 seed going into the NCAA tournament.
I mean, who knows where he slots in? He's probably your Friday guy.
He is.
I would guess JD Thompson game 2, Bowker day 3, and Fennell out of the pen. So there's some players. And was there not another player they were supposed to, or the Kropp kid, Kobe Kropp, who ended up not, yeah, and was a power guy. So, yeah, the concept they haven't tried is obviously false, but there's some players that have worked out. The Mancini thing is interesting to me. Chris, I don't know if he started to get more healthy or what has caused a little bit of his – I know it's just 2 home runs, but 2 pretty big home runs. The home run in Knoxville was huge, and then the home run against Kentucky was another encouraging sign. Still not hitting for a great average, but, again, if he can give you a home run or 2 or 3 in the postseason, that would go a long way. Brody Johnston, we know, and Rigdon, those newcomers, Rigdon, Johnston, and Mancini are hitting for great average. But again, they're having good enough at bats. And you look at like Jonathan Vastine, Chris, is having quietly a really good year, not just in the SEC, but in the country. If you look at his defense and his average is up to 287, he's getting some power. Obviously, we know of his power approach, but RJ Austin now is starting to come along, and that's a scary proposition for opponents of Vanderbilt and Colin Barzey. I mean, you look at this lineup, and you start to go, okay, well, who are a couple guys we got to really try to shut down, and you can't narrow it down to that. I mean, Nelson. Humphrey's given you a little bit here and there. Vastine, Holcomb, Barzey. Rose hasn't had as many at-bats, Chris, but I did not expect this from this lineup. I thought this could be a potential ceiling for this lineup, but to see what Holcomb has done and to see what Vastine, too, has done, but Barzey, I mean, I didn't expect it from as young of a player as he's been. He's been huge, Chris, and the difference defensively, nothing against Jack Bulger, but I thought there was a drop off catcher wise the last year or two defensively, not by much, but Barzey's played a great defense, and he's also hitting for power. So this team is, I still think they have a small margin, Chris, and we've seen that. Kind of like the basketball team. They don't win. They don't really blow anybody out. They also don't get blown out. So I still think, obviously, there's things to clean up, and I still think matchup wise, if they get into regional against a team, I mean, heck, Chris, Tennessee Tech's a good team, and if they do see Louisville, if you do see who was the 3 seed, forget who the 3 seed was, but
all the Kentucky,
those teams are good, and so. For me, I look at what they've done and say, they can absolutely make it to Omaha. But they're not a team that you can go into the postseason and not play the way you're playing now. They got to keep playing the way they're playing. Because that the offense, and Chris, there's direct correlation to the power numbers. Since the Oklahoma series, this team power wise has, like I said, done things they haven't done in the last couple years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lineup that's gotten better. This lineup that's not super easy to pitch to. It's not the scariest lineup around. I think a guy that's a little underrated is Rustin Rigdon. I think he's terrific. I know the batting average isn't great, but when you walk 20% of the time as a freshman, you foul off a lot of pitches. You don't, he will strike out, but he's not chasing stuff out of the zone. You're going to have to throw him something there. I love his approach. I think he might be the next great Vanderbilt hitter, even better than Brody Johnston, who's got some skills. But Brody's got some refinement to do with the contact piece. And I think that'll come. But, the middle of the order, I don't think anybody wants to pitch to Holcomb right now. You saw him get intentionally walked last week. And the 3 pitches before they finally said, we'll free pass him, we're nowhere near the plate. Everybody knows what he can do. I just think it's a lineup that's good. I'll tell you what, though, Billy, I think the key to this team right now is Cody Bowker. Because I don't know if he's hit a wall. He's been a reliever, but it just seems like they'll get 3 or 4 good innings out of him, and then it kind of comes apart. Now, look, if you throw Connor Fennell back in the pen, which they have done, and I think is a really wise move, I just like reserving the right to use him wherever. Like, I think J.D. Thompson is going to be fine. I think you're fine starting him. My biggest concern for them right now is let's say you get a team that can really hit, maybe a Georgia Tech gets in here. I think Georgia Tech would host right now, but I don't know if that's the right team or not, but just fill in the blank with whatever.
Yeah. An Oregon type from a couple of years ago that just came in.
An Oregon type, and I did think about them. I'm not using them because I think Oregon is going to be a host, if not.
Well, no, an Oregon type from a couple of years ago that came in and beat Vandy. Yeah.
No, and that's exactly what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you got to figure out where the point is with him. Is it second time around the order? Is it a pitch count of 60 or 70? Like, where is it falling apart? I'm sure they're asking those questions, but that's where they've gotten in trouble. That's where they got in trouble a couple of years ago. They win the opener at home, and then Oregon jumps on them early, and they never really recovered. And I think that's the things that have to be managed, because I don't think they're going to put 15 runs on a decent, let's say they get in their regional, they win their Friday game. Let's say the 2 seed wins. I don't think they're going to just clobber somebody in that setting, and every run's going to count. And to me, it's going to be, you've got to figure out what is Bowker's tolerance and where's the exact point to pull him, because they've got plenty of guys who can come in and pitch well and do different things. But to me, that's their key. And look, if they get Bowker straightened out and he gives you 6 innings of 1 run or 2 runs, then you're really in great shape. But to me, that's my biggest concern right now, because that game 2 of a regional is super important. And he just has not given them consistency out of that spot in a minute.
Yeah. Well, we should see Bowker at some point this week. You would assume he goes if Vanderbilt wins tomorrow. You would assume he goes Saturday in that early game. Vandy, to reset the bracket, because it does need to be reset. Last night's game between Mississippi State and A&M got pushed to right now. A&M is up big on Mississippi State right now. Up big 6-0.
I'm going to get my remote to turn that on.
Yeah. Jace Laviolette had a grand slam. So they currently lead Mississippi State. But Chris, you've got Alabama, Tennessee later today, Oklahoma and Georgia later today, Florida and Ole Miss later today. And then it carries over. So you'll have 3 games tomorrow instead of just 2. There were only supposed to be 2 tomorrow. Now you'll have 3, barring any more weather concerns. But I would sit here and tell you guys to prepare for the latest time slot tomorrow night. Vanderbilt's game against either Georgia or Oklahoma will probably not start until close to 8 o'clock Central is what I would guess. Probably that 7:30, 8 o'clock Central range, unless the first 2 games of that day of tomorrow go perfectly as everyone wants, but that doesn't typically happen in Hoover. But my favorite thing about Hoover, Chris, is that no matter how much rain they get down there, they find a way to get every game in somehow. Yeah. I was down there, I think a few years ago, and we got so much rain down there. And, there's a lot of sitting around, you're going to the mall and there's nothing to do, but somehow they got them in. I think they ended up playing more on Saturday than they thought they would originally, but they give themselves enough leeway here to play these games. So again, Vanderbilt will play the winner of Georgia and Oklahoma. It's been announced J.D. Thompson will go for Vanderbilt tomorrow. Chris, it'll be interesting to see if Georgia wins, who they go with in game 2. Not sure if you know who they're going with today, but it'll be interesting, the pitching scenarios for Vanderbilt. Is it Thompson, Bowker, Fennell? That's what you would think it is. But the bullpen, how does the bullpen shake out? How do they treat Sawyer Hawks? How do they treat Ethan McIlvain? How do you treat some other guys? But they've got a lot of guys in that pen, as we know. So that's a little reset. Chris, we do have a good bit of mailbag questions. Actually, we'll go ahead. I know you got to get over to the game and get some work done. But I do want to get to some of these mailbag questions, and they're brought to you by Sutherland and Belk, family-owned injury law firm, sponsoring the chat room as well. We got some chat room questions as well. We'll get to some of those and today's mailbag. If your loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. Also, our guest line with Mr. Chris Lee is brought to you by John Levin, good friend of the show, Wobble Bond Dickinson. Thanks to student athletes at Vanderbilt for their dedication, effort, and hard work. Guest line also brought to you by Yeaman Packaging Systems, leaders in end-of-line packaging automation. All right, Chris, Wonders. This is a new username. Obviously, this year, there are still high expectations remaining. But what's the outlook for next year's VandyBoys? It's a good question. I think it's pretty good, especially considering I think there's a shot. I'm just throwing this out there. I think there's a chance Riley Nelson comes back, which would be huge. You've got Brody Johnston, Rustin Rigdon, Colin Barzey, Braden Holcomb, all back. See what Jaden Davis develops into. What happens with Maldonado. You've got Mendez. Does he turn into anything? You'll still need some guys out of the portal to come fill in some spots, Chris. But you've talked about this. You mentioned this on the board a few weeks back. I think they're really high for next year.
Yeah, I think. I wonder if there's an R.J. Austin conversation to be had because he's not had the kind of year that he thought. I think you can, in the NIL era, you can pay him a competitive amount to make it worth his while. I think that was a big move that they did with Jonathan Vastine last year. To me, that's worth trying for next year. I think that, Johnston and Rigdon and Holcomb are a really good foundation of a lineup with Barcy in there. And guys generally get better, right, if they're healthy. I think Jaden Davis has got another year. I mean, you could see. I still think there's better baseball in Chris Maldonado. There's got to be. I could see Maldonado coming back and hitting a dozen home runs next year and being a guy that you can put in the 5 or 6 hole and we're like, oh wow, didn't see this coming. Mm-hmm. Well, you saw flashes of it his freshman year. Pitching wise, Fennell is going to be a factor. Austin Nye could be their Friday guy. That Kranzler, McIlvain, Cyber, Miller Green, Guth, all back. Shorey, we haven't seen him, or Hudson Barton, I guess, has been hurt a while. They're super talented arms. England Bryan has really pitched. You could get another year of Huseman. He was a highly sought kid, out of high school a couple years ago that really hasn't pitched well. They're starting to use him in spots and even sometimes against righties. That's a guy, the right team could fall in love with him and offer him an amount that makes it worth his while. But I just look, they have a lot of pieces here. I think they'll use the portal strategically. I'm sure they'll go after some number 1 and number 2 starter types. Again, they landed one for a minute last year until they didn't. This feels a lot like 2018 when I think they were number 1 in the country for 2019 because they brought so many guys back and like an Ethan Paul for a 4th year and then Fonte for a 4th year. And it just felt like on paper, okay, they've been building towards something. It feels like this year feels a lot like that to me, except now that there's a ceiling for this year that maybe wasn't there for 2018. So maybe they get the best of both worlds, get back to Omaha this year, and are really loaded for next year. But I'll tell you another thing, man, Billy, and I really pay attention to this again, is just look at the chemistry and the clubhouse stuff and look at how they handle their business in Knoxville. Look at how they had each other's backs, but they didn't let it spin out of control, and get into a street fight. I feel like you've got some real leadership on this team that has always been foundational to what Tim Corbin wants to do. Get a few freshmen through the draft. I mean, I think their future for next year, and we don't know the roster yet, but I have a feeling they're going to be back in that elite conversation when all the polls come out.
Yeah, R.J. Austin told you guys Saturday after Game 3 against Kentucky that, they're just such a good team. Right? And it's rare to see as cohesive of a unit as Vanderbilt has this season in today's world of college athletics. RJ talked about, I don't know if he mentioned they may not have the most talent, but it's it's proven this is not they don't have a first team all SEC guy, right? They don't have a first round draft pick, right? Their closest guy is JD Thompson, who's probably a second rounder. And so you look at that as a backdrop and look at what they've done. You could say they've overachieved, but also this is what Vanderbilt baseball has done before. They've overachieved before. But they do. I'm with you, Chris. They work together as a team, and their swagger has been different. And I think you've seen a little bit of a different Tim Corbin. I think obviously Jason King has helped a lot. I think Ty Blankmeyer has really helped a lot. There's just been a new energy, and I'm with you on there. Princeton right-hander Jacob Faulkner is also the sidewinder is also coming in for Vandy. Had a 4.07 ERA in 65 appearances across 3 years after redshirting his freshman year. He's a first-team All-Ivy guy. Also, Max Jensen from Cornell, another first-team All-Ivy League guy, coming in as a bat next year. So, well, I know this year's not over, but next year's already looking pretty good for this program. Columbiano Door. Once baseball's postseason ends, what does coverage look like on the site for the summer? Any future podcast guests being considered? That's a good question. We will probably, obviously, when things slow down, we slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
But Chris, that's a good question. We might even brainstorm some. A lot of what we do is just sitting here talking, right? Especially with baseball going on, might try to do that with some players, with some coaches, with some guys that have been on the podcast in a while. Stay tuned.
Yeah. I'll just look. It's going to look different next year. I don't know how else to put this. What we do depends on sponsorship. It's something that people have heard me say that for years. But I think next year the correlation is going to be stronger with that than ever before. I think we'll probably. Billy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My hotel Wi-Fi is a little bulky, but apparently it's.
No, you're good. I got you.
It's better forward facing than it is for me. I think there'll be some things that we drop, just because there's just so much time to go. And you've seen me. I've been less a part of things here. That wouldn't have been my plan a few years ago, but you've got to, you've got to chase your living. And then I think the years of just bad sports have taken a toll in a bad, in a small fan base too. So we're kind of recircling the off season, and it'll look a little different. We haven't put all the finishing touches on that yet, but we'll do our best to provide people what they're interested in. As best as we can tell through our analytics, and do it in a way that doesn't exhaust us all.
Agreed. Vandy fan Pate, if you're Tim Corbin, what is your approach to the SEC tournament? Do you try to win the whole thing or preserve energy for the NCAA tournament? And can we improve our position if we win the SEC? Corbin has never walked into the SEC tournament saying, you know what, guys, let's rest ourselves. Let's ease up. We don't want to get anybody hurt. They play really well here. They always do, whether they're an 8 seed, a 4 seed, the top overall seed in the tournament. Corbin, I think, is also motivated to win it, Chris. They've got 4 SEC titles, or is it 5? I think it's 4.
I don't know, but here's the thing. I think, like he's always said, and this is even when you had to play 5 or 6 games under certain circumstances. And when he's always said, I don't think anything prepares you to win baseball games like winning baseball games. And now that you've got the downside, like they're only going to play 3 games, right? You could even say, hey, you want to get to the championship game because it's a dress rehearsal for next weekend, right? Except against much tougher teams than whatever you're going to see in a regional. So to me, there's not a lot of downside now because you get everybody close to regular schedule and you're only playing 3 games maximum. So, yeah. And plus, instead of being a 5 or 6 seed, you might be a 2 nationally, which gets you a little bit of an easier time in weekend 2, if you get there in theory.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right that most games you get here is 3. Then that's a good argument that, hey, you want to get to Sunday, give everybody a chance to pitch and give everybody a chance to get some ABs. Black Outdoor, any update on how the rest of Vandy United is going? Baseball, McGugan renovations. The football, the south end zone, it's hard to tell over there. Obviously, the construction cam is I don't think is up anymore. At least there of the south end zone, could be wrong. But going to baseball games, you can see that, and I think they've started to put some lighting in. It's getting closer. That'll be done before the football season. Baseball renovations haven't started, so yeah, that's still a couple of years away.
I think the whole thing's being slow played. It has been for a while. I think they've got some issues there, and I think I think some donors have some trust issues with things here and there, which doesn't help you. I'm not speaking for everybody, but that's been in the air a little bit lately.
Okay, cousin CJ, D1 Baseball has projected Vandy's national seed as low as 9 and as high as 3. So I know where he's going here. They are ranked number 9 in the country in their top 25 poll. And I'm confused by this too, but their national seed is number 3. Why is there such a discrepancy there, Chris?
Well, they're different things. I mean, and rankings aren't even really what, how do I say this? Your NCAA tournament seeding mostly is your resume. And as I've said for a while, theirs is tremendous. That's reflected there. They don't think they're as good as the resume. And they may not be, but that's just what it is. The polls are where they rank the teams, how good I think you really are. I have an issue with the way they do polls, and I get it because they're doing a lot of stuff over at D1 and BA and other places, and the poll is just one of the things you do. The easy way to do a poll is, did you win your series or did you lose your series, and you move up or down? Well, that potentially ignores half your games that you play in the weekend. Ignores your midweek. And it ignores, did you get swept or, did you salvage a game? In other words, 0-4 and 2-2 are almost the same thing in the way the rankings are done. Yeah. And so I've never given them much stock because of that. I think you have to kind of reset the whole picture, including going back and saying, hey, are some of the series wins you got early in the season maybe better than you thought, or the losses worse than you thought, and look at it big picture. They don't have the time to do it. They react on a snap assessment of, did you win or did you lose your weekend, and do you move up or down generally? And I think that's how the polls get a little skewed at times. But yeah, but they're different things also.
Let's see here. One more from cousin CJ. Any word on how Vastine and Humphrey are doing? Are they planning to sit out this tournament, or will they play? I know Vastine will play. Corbin has called him an Iron Man in the past. That he's it's going to take a lot for him not to play. Humphrey, I know, has been dealing with some headaches, some migraines, some dizziness. So I would assume Humphrey plays. I'll tell you this: I would bet on Vastine playing over Humphrey, but I do think they both play. I don't know if he said anything else Saturday that I couldn't remember about them. Chris, I think Vastine will play though.
Yeah, I do wonder if they are on the verge of run ruling somebody, and he's coming up at the bottom of the order. If you see a defensive substitution late in that one, maybe a Riker Wake or someone like that, just to keep that ankle, anything from happening there. But I don't know. Vastine rarely comes out. Tim Corbin's a guy that when he's got a great defensive shortstop, he's hesitant to take him out under any circumstances, and Vastine's rarely come off the field for a couple of years now.
All right, last one from cousin CJ. Chris, what's the over-under on how much ice cream you'll have eaten before the end of the tournament on Sunday?
Well, it's going to help that I'm not going to be there the next couple of days. I'll get an ice cream bar or two today.
There you go. Well, thanks for hopping on, Chris. Really appreciate it. I know you got to get back down to the park, and obviously Vanderbilt will play tomorrow. I would assume it'll be a later start than expected and anticipated. But we'll see. I know Joey will be down there, and we'll have coverage. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be an intriguing next 2 to 3 weeks for this program, Chris. And it starts this week. I like what you said, that it's important. They, a lot of schools, especially if you're a top 4 seed, you may want to get to Sunday, so you don't, so it's not a wasted trip in Hoover.
Yeah. Yeah, just so much fun to watch. The storylines and the drama around this tournament are better than they've been in a while. You could have a couple of coaches getting let go after this tournament. You got teams playing for hosting bids, and well, they usually call them national seeds, where you're 1 to 8. I think they call all of them national seeds now, technically speaking.
Okay.
But you got teams playing, to make sure they host 2 weekends. I think Vanderbilt's already kind of locked that down. But, yeah, lots of stuff going on.
We'll see. Again, Vanderbilt in action. They'll play the winner of Georgia and Oklahoma tomorrow. Big thanks to all of our sponsors. Go subscribe to the site. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Fire away your comments and questions. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee. chrislee70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 247 podcast.